Everyone's doing well. I'm here. It is Monday morning, so it's 7 a.m. But guys, we know the boxing weekend isn't over yet. We have that Las Vegas card with Inoue and Ramon Cardenas to take place still. And we also have Espinosa and Vasquez. So there's a lot to talk about. We've had a busy weekend. And in this video, in this live stream, I'm going to go over our picks that we covered last week. We're going to talk a little bit about where we lost, where we made money. There's a lot to talk about. What went down in New York City, what went down in Riyadh, what's going down today in Las Vegas, as well as stay tuned to the end of this live stream. I'm going to get into a little bit about another huge week in boxing. We have a lot of fight cards this weekend, this upcoming weekend. Katsarakis is fighting. We got Emmanuel Navarrete. He's fighting this weekend. Kachache is fighting. Mean Machine's back. There's so many fight cards. Erickson Lubin's a big one that I know a lot of people are interested to see how he looks. So we're going to get to those upcoming fights at the end of the video. But I want to start with what we talked about last week, the Teofimo Lopez versus Arnold Barboza Jr. fight. We'll start there. Then we have, obviously, Devin Haney to talk about. And then the main event in New York City with Rolly and Ryan. And then we're going to get to Riyadh. But you guys can leave your questions in the comments below. Maybe put your 2 cents. I want to start with Barboza Jr. and it always goes up and down. I'm interested to see where he's going to go from here. That was a great version. He was focused. But was he as great as the announcers were making him out? I don't know. I don't think that Teofimo Lopez showed superstar greatness in there. It wasn't the most exciting fight when you think about what we've seen him when he's been at his best. But compared to the rest of that card, it was one of the more... The card was kind of a dud. I want to ask you guys your question. How much... Before we get to Haney versus Ramirez, I feel the crowd plays a factor. And I think this is one of the things to where Turki Al-Sheikh is missing the mark here with boxing, is that it's a sport to where you can't just put money on the table and expect results or expect greatness because you have all this money. It's kind of like judging a person, judging someone's character based on their bank account. You know, there's great people I've met in my life who have little to no money, and then there's also shitty people I know personally who are super wealthy. And I think this weekend was a good example of Turki Al-Sheikh taking boxing for granted. Why fly from New York City to Riyadh in 24 hours with the same ring team as well? Wasn't a great card, I agree. Like when you watch, when we fast forward to the Riyadh card, you see like Mike Coppinger there. Why is he there? Why do you have to fly these people from city to city without adding any more value? And it was just one of those things that rubbed me the wrong way. Let's go back to New York City. I thought the announcers were, I talked about this earlier. All kudos to, you know, how much we want to revere certain people in the boxing game. I just don't think it's good when all the glazing goes on during the live fights, because in a sport where we want it to grow and it's growing, all it takes is a guy to talk trash about another guy, especially coming from an announcer's perspective, for a boxing casual to think that the announcer must be right. I'm talking about Devin Haney. I have the stats pulled up. They were just bashing Haney against Ramirez. But as the fight played out and you look at the rest of the card, Haney, when you look at the things in perspective over the whole weekend, Haney threw and landed more punches than... Haney threw 70. Haney landed 70 total punches. Ryan Garcia lands 66 total punches. Rolly Romero lands 57 total punches. Canelo Alvarez lands 56 total punches. And Skull lands 55 total punches. And it's fascinating to me that the whole entire time, the analysts were banking on maybe Ryan Garcia to show out and showcase his skills to even make the narrative that Haney was fighting. Like, they said it was a snooze fest, and it wasn't the most exciting fight. Absolutely big contrast between Eubank, 100%. And Will, it's the word, Jose didn't get shit off. You have to criticize him for winning while running, still gets glory. Yeah, and the thing that wasn't spoken about, they didn't even talk about Haney coming off, during the Haney-Ramirez fight, they didn't even talk about Haney coming off a guy who tested positive for PEDs. For the announcers to say that Haney was putting everybody to sleep, that... I like to hold boxing in revelry. It's like, dude, you're an announcer. would you tell this to this person's face? And when the boxing casuals hear the announcers talking shit like that about a fighter, they're going to regurgitate that narrative. This is why there's YouTube channels way bigger than my channel who spread false information, who are clickbaity, who talk trash about fighters, because they freaking hear it by these announcers that we look up to. And I thought the card started off on the wrong foot with that. And then you go to the main event, and then the same announcers were talking like Ryan Garcia was the face of boxing. It's like, have we forgot that Garcia's never been a world champion, never beaten a world champion? Have we forgot that Garcia's a convicted drug user? And at the time, and you know, I hope he gets his mind right, but he fought like a guy who didn't want to be there. He fought like a guy that if you're running a boxing gym or if you have students or athletes, you wouldn't want them to look up to this guy. You know, it was just all weird. And I wonder how much of that has to do with no crowd as well. So back to my point about the whole New York City card was a dud. Kudos to Rolly Romero. In my breakdown, I said my heart was with Rolly. I said I wanted Rolly to win, but like a lot of you guys, I didn't see that coming. It was like as soon as Rolly landed that left hook, Ryan Garcia's whole spirit left him. And I'm not going to sit here. I know Paulie Malignaggi's gone live in the last few days. He was saying that's a perfect example of when you see a guy who's on PEDs versus a guy who's not in Ryan Garcia, which is easy to come to that conclusion. You know what I'm saying? On Monday morning quarterback, hindsight's 2020. Garcia put himself in that position, failed a PED test, looked great against Devin, and his next fight looked terrible. So that's and we know he's not the mentally most stout young fighter. So he's going to have to deal with those demons. And it was so interesting over this last year how a fighter could not win a fight, test positive for PEDs, but grow his brand. That was wild to me. And I'm not a lose-lose for Haney. I feel like he was showing hand speed. Yeah, Haney in moments looked good. There were certain exchanges with Haney's hand speed where you saw and you witnessed why the people who promote him talk about him being so good. And he's still young. I said the same thing about the commentary. Boxing's a popularity contest. That's why they treated Ryan the way he did. Yeah, I think that shit needs to stop. You know what I mean? And you guys know, the longer you stick around on my channel, you guys know that that's how I run my channel. I'm not going to show biased or favoritism. I'm always going to hold the sport of boxing over one singular fighter. Guys, could you like this video, though? Everybody tuning in right now, it'll help it. I hate using the word algorithm. I'm still kind of like getting used to asking you guys to do things for me. But if you're watching right now and you're commenting and we're kind of engaging, just like the video because that's the way the algorithm works. I guess people will see more of it. I think it works for Dev, though, because it keeps his name in the media. True, there is two sides to it. Garcia seemed to accept defeat halfway through. Disappointing performance, pleased for Rolly. I totally agree. And it was one of even the scorecards were crazy. If you guys look at the scorecards of the Rolly-Ryan Garcia fight, one of the judges only had Rolly winning by 3 points, which I thought was insane considering Rolly was doing everything. But then when you think about the total stats, and, you know, I use Stats Don't Lie in my breakdown videos specifically. A lot of people who don't understand why I say Stats Don't Lie, it's not like you're going to come to my channel and it's going to be all analytical stats. I use that to use specific stats to create the narrative about the boxers that we're talking about. So we're just not hating on a boxer because he's from Mexico, or we're not hating on a boxer because he's from, you know, pick another country. We actually are using facts to talk about our fighters. But the interesting thing about how stats sometimes do lie, literally speaking, is in the Garcia Romero fight. If you were just looking at the stats, it says Ryan Garcia landed more punches, which is insane. Garcia 66 out of 210, Rolly 57 out of 280. So if you were just looking on paper, Garcia did outland Rolly, but when you watch that entire fight and see that fight, and this is why one round you might throw a lot of punches, one round you might not throw many. So it is kind of not always smart to just read the stats on a sheet and come to a conclusion without watching the entire story. A fight is a story. It's a narrative. Ramirez fought like he was paid not to throw punches. He just couldn't cut the ring off. I think he wanted to show flashes, but not too much for the rematch. Shitboxing, big disappointment from Ryan. Also, yeah, two stories of not cutting the ring off. I mean, Ramirez couldn't cut the ring off, and, you know, we talked about in our fight, in the fight week leading up, how Haney was working with Nate Jones. A former Olympian, won a bronze medal in 1996, a heavyweight fighter. Nate Jones worked a lot with Floyd Mayweather, and he's a defensive-minded heavyweight. And we saw sort of this in Haney's game plan, and it was another awful side of the announcers. Why is Haney running? Why is Haney running? And it took him to the fourth round to say, oh, maybe it's Haney's game plan. Of course it was his game plan. Use lateral movement, circle away, kind of taste Romero's power early, see what he has. You guys, they did not mention once, Haney's coming off a loss, a majority decision loss where he got dropped multiple times against a guy who failed tests. That should have been the narrative. That was shocking to me, that the Haney fight, that should have been the narrative. It should have been that, and then also focus on Ramirez, who has a great career in his own right. Could the former world champion Ramirez cut the ring off? Rather than focusing on those exact things that the fight should have been about, all they talked about was Haney's putting everyone to sleep. And it's like, that's another thing, that's the ring's fault. That's the people behind putting the promotion. That's Turki Al-Sheikh's fault for putting people on the microphone, spinning that narrative, and that's what he wanted. But where does Haney go from here? I mean, he's back on track. Ramirez, you know, he couldn't cut the ring off. Where does Ryan Garcia go from here? Rolly Romero, does he stay at 147? Rolly looked good at 47. He looked bodied up. He looked like he carried the weight well. His cardio was great. His conditioning was great. And cheers to him, man. The last few years on my channel, you always hear what I say about Rolly. He's one of my favorite fighters because of exactly what we saw. You know, everything from, you know, I just found out this fight week that he was pretty much a mute up until his early teenage years. He didn't really speak because he had a lisp. And you start learning these little things about Rolly Romero. You start cheering for a guy like that. And seeing him drill that double left hook in the locker room prior, in the same double left hook he landed against Garcia. Granted, it is his go-to combo. You could see him in past fights do the same double left hook, and Garcia got smacked with it. And he could pop. We talked about it in the fight week. Rolly could pop, man. He could crack. And, I mean, Tank Davis, however much you want to put on anything that comes out of his mouth, Tank said that Rolly was the guy that hit the hardest. No crowd killed the vibe too. I agree with you, Andrew. That no crowd, man, I think there's something to that in terms of the psychology, what we get from the energy of the crowd. 147 suits Rolly. I agree. Rolly looked 200 pounds. He looked jacked. He looked fucking yoked, especially upper body. Ryan Dunn, I really want to see Teo versus Boots. They got the slick style. I wouldn't mind that. I don't know if Teo versus Boots quite yet. I think Teo should fight the winner of Hitchens versus Kambosos. That seems to be pretty decent in my opinion. Saudi exclusively killing the crowd and TV view and energy. Yeah, the Saudi no crowd thing is wild to me. And how they stole, after Rolly dropped Ryan, I bet live on Rolly. Attaboy, Ali Penfold. Smart. Do you remember when Chris Mannix says IBF? I agree with Chris. Yeah, Rolly's back. Look, Jack. Devin can do the decision. So, yeah, and them taking Canelo out of Las Vegas is insane, too. So, let's move to Riyadh real quick. We saw Jaime Munguia. I want to mention Munguia because I saw growth in his game. I know he gets a lot of hate, but I'm a fan of Munguia, just specifically by trade. I'm a strength and conditioning and boxing coach, so I work with a lot of people who are trying to better themselves on a non-professional level. A lot of like CEOs, bankers, people in corporate Sydney will hire me and I help them get healthy. So I like the work ethic of people. And I've always liked Jaime Munguia's work ethic. I like his, you know, what he does in his training and how he was, you know, he's still a work in progress. And I've said this about a lot of young fighters. We only see the version when we see them on fight night. But any fighter who's under the age of 30 is still developing. Even a guy like Jerome Boots Ennis, he's still developing. He's still young. Munguia is still young. In his rematch with Sarase didn't improve at all. He was the same exact guy. He was fighting with more confidence, and he seemed like he was having a good time, and hats off to Sarase. Changed his whole life with that one punch in their first matchup. But with Munguia, you could see the addition of having Eddie Reynoso in his camp. High guard here, was bringing his hands back more responsibly here when he was jabbing. He showed me things. His defense was more responsible. It was a bit frustrating because if you would watch Munguia's entire career, you want to see him unwind and let go of those combos like any Munguia fight. But he took a lot less damage. I think he improved his defensive game. His fight IQ has improved, and I think he's going to extend his career. And he got a victory. It wasn't the most exciting fight, but he got back on track. It's always good when you get knocked out as a fighter and then get to rematch and get that victory. So hats to Munguia. There's a lot of fights to make for him. We'll see what happens. Drink loads of protein shakes full of sweeteners isn't healthy. I agree with you. It was a close fight. Close fight aren't robberies. Oh, F.A. Bacoli. Yeah. Because I didn't have time to cover that F.A. Bacoli on the channel, I didn't bring it up. But how did you? I watched that. How did you? Seeing that it was a draw, I watched the last half of the fight because I had sparring early morning, and I was watching the rest of it on the bus home. And everything I was reading, even the live odds had FA as a huge favorite going into the last round. And then when I saw my parlay got voided because it was a draw, that was kind of shocking. I'd have to rewatch that fight. Let me know what you guys think. Was that a draw with Bacole, or was that a robbery? I'm asking you guys. I didn't really watch it. Jaime should get the winner of Berlanga and Shiraz. Berlanga Shiraz is a good fight. They had their stare down in New York City. This is only Shiraz's. He was fighting at 160 prior. That's going to be a 168. Turkey had Bacole's back. Yep, they wanted him to win that fight for sure. Bacole needs to watch his weight. He was lucky to get a draw, in my opinion. You're not the first person I heard say that. Bacole landed some heavy shots that hurt FA. Were there any knockdowns in that fight, guys? Like I said, I didn't watch the entire Bacole versus FA fight, but I saw some exchanges. Bacole looked a little bit out of shape. He never comes in looking too in shape, so no knockdowns. So there we go. Didn't get that. A couple of the prop bets. Overall, guys, I do want to talk about the Canelo fight. Obviously, I took AB Barboza Jr. I lost that pick. I picked Devin by decision at plus 130. That one hit. All of us, I picked Garcia to beat Romero. Lost that one. I picked Munguia by decision. That one hit. I picked Canelo at a plus 290 by decision. That one hit. And we got 2 fights left. We got Espinosa today fighting Vasquez, and we got NUA. But with the Canelo fight, guys, in my breakdown, I talked a little bit about how it wasn't going to be an exciting fight regarding Skull's style. We knew that he was coming from the Cuban background. He's going to be a mover. He's going to poke that jab out. He thought he was winning rounds. Now, Canelo, and I talked about in my breakdown, when are we going to say that we're starting to see the degradation of Canelo's skills? I mean, you're supposedly the highest level, but you can't cut the ring off. How many exchanges did we see in the middle of the ring last night? 0. Not one exchange of Skull. Now, did Skull want to play that game? No, that was Skull's game plan. Canelo is the guy that's the face of boxing. Canelo's the guy who picked to fight Skull. Canelo's the guy that needs to make the adjustments to not make it a boring fight, to use his skills to cut the ring off, to put Skull in bad positions, to stop his lateral footwork. None of that happened. And when you look at these stats, the Skull stats are insane. Canelo only threw 152 punches, landing 56. Skull threw, it says he threw 293, but a lot of that was just touch. Skull probably sat down on 2 punches the entire fight, ran the whole time. The best part about that fight was watching Skull's lateral movement, and he had these gold shoes on, and the gold dust was falling into the ring. That was pretty badass. That was my favorite thing about the fight, which is sick. Another stat that I found interesting was body shots. So Canelo, 42, Skull 11, total jabs to the body 2. Yeah, the whole narrative in New York was about Devin Haney put people to sleep. Not once did they mention that in Riyadh. We know that after the fight, Terrence Crawford came into the ring. Canelo looked like an old man plodding along. Yeah, he didn't have any urgency. Canelo should have learned from the Lara fight 100%. A lot of people think Lara won that fight. Rewatch that fight. Haney threw more than Canelo. Yes, he did. Landed too. Canelo has declined. Yes, he looked slow and got frustrated by Skull's movement. Mustard on the beat. So it's kind of like, now what are we thinking about Bud versus Canelo in September? They announced it. Bud comes into the ring September 12th, Allegiant Stadium in Vegas. It's stateside. It should be a packed house. How do we see that going? I mean, we're obviously going to be covering that fight here. You guys, it's interesting because the weight is still going to be a significant detail. How will Bud fight Canelo in terms of strategy? That version of Canelo I saw last night, Bud beats. I don't care if you want to disagree with me. I'd love to have that open debate. The version I saw last night against Canelo, Bud Crawford beats that guy. He does beat him. I think there's nothing that I saw. I saw an old aging fighter who really lacked the urgency to want to win a fight. We know that he's a slow starter. He always gives away early rounds, but the way he was he gave away rounds 1 through 4 yesterday was like he was disinterested. And I know it was that fight was I think they fought at like 5 a.m. their time, so it could stream live in America. So that had to play a factor. That Skull is a joke fighter, popularity contest. I hope it flops. I don't think Crawford moves that much, however. Crawford mixing up will keep Canelo off rhythm, in my opinion. I don't care who wins the fight, to be honest. Yeah. So we got that September 12th. It's one of those fights on paper. Right now, a lot of people aren't too excited. Everybody wanted the Benavidez. Dude, we're never going to. The Benavidez Canelo fight, why I've always dissed that fight, is because Benavidez. What would David Benavidez do to that Canelo? You know what I mean? Unless Canelo fans are thinking that in the exchanges in the pocket, Canelo's power would be too bearing for Benavidez. But that dude is just too big, too young, too hungry. And this is why Canelo hasn't fought him. And that's fine. I think after last night, Canelo versus Crawford is a more interesting fight in terms of what the experts are going to say, how the outcome, in terms of interesting with the outcome. People are going to probably second guess being so quick to say Canelo's going to beat him. We'll see what happens. Bud's taller than him, longer reach, 168 pounds. We'll see. We still got 2 fights today, guys, in Vegas. Naoya Inoue is fighting Cardenas, and we got Espinosa versus Edward Vasquez. Both of those are title fights. We know the undisputed 122 in the main event, and then Rafa at 126. I talked about last week, Rafa at 126 was one of my favorite fighters to watch, just because it's 6'1" fighting at 126 pounds. The guy fights at range, and he fights in the pocket, and he's long. His knockout to win ratio is impressive, and I was expecting Inoue this week to talk about moving up. He didn't. Inoue said he was going to stay at 122. So are we going to get Junto, my guy at 118, to move up to fight? That's the fight that's the one true boxing fans should be excited about. Junto Nakatani moving up to 122 to fight Naoya Inoue. Inoue said it yesterday. He's not going to move to 126. There goes the Rafa fight, in my opinion. I think he stays at 22. Junto and Naoya, an all battle with Japan. We know Junto's cut his teeth, though, with training in America over the last few years. So Junto has his American fan base is growing. So it will be an all-Japan fight. I don't want to think too far ahead. Anyway, still has to get through Cardenas. But come on, he's $1, 26-1. Cardenas is a tough, nice little fighter. But it's another one of these sort of setup fights. Agreed, Crawford can win a decision. Looking forward to that Lubin. I'll be covering the Lubin and Ardeo fight. Ardeo Holmes. I'm going to get into that in a second. Had a fight with my sparring partner, Ismael Villarreal, who's a pro 154, hoping Lubin takes it. Can you talk to Gary at 3D Boxing? He is tripping, thinking Vasquez will win against Espinoza. I don't know Gary. I don't know Gary personally. I know that Vasquez is his guy. I know that he personally knows Edward Vasquez. For him to think that he's going to be Rafa, cue Crucial Conflict. Smoking on, hey. I'm a 90s kid, so I grew up with the 90s hip-hop and rap. And there was this band, Crucial Conflict, and a song called Hey. So whenever somebody makes, in my eyes, an outrageous boxing decision, sometimes it's me, I always hear that song. He must be smoking on that good hay. I don't like betting Saudi fights if Turkey can influence scorecards. 100%. We've seen this happen in the last 2 months. I don't want to believe that Turkey influences scorecards, but the fight that jumps out on paper, in my opinion, is the Carlos Adames versus Hamza Shiraz fight. We know that Turkey loves Hamza. They're like brothers. That was not a draw. Adames won that fight, and the saving grace was that the belts didn't exchange hands. We know. So there is truth to that, and I think that's Ali who said that. I agree with you. I think Mike beats Jack. I think that was a kind of a lackluster fight. I think Badu Jack, though, had... the announcers were kind of glazing him a bit on his angle changes. 41 years old, Badu Jack would land a step and jab, and he would circle off. And the announcers were acting like it was the next coming of Vasily Lomachenko at cruiserweight. It was hilarious. The fight really didn't have too much. I'm not too mad with that decision. I don't think Espinoza versus Ball. Love that fight. Espinoza versus Ball. Love that fight. 2 different styles. We saw Ball in a very tough fight last time. At least and guys, this is something I want to say, and this is Hamza Shiraz headlining in July discussing. This is something I want to say that you could take this personal. You don't have to take this personal. But one of my favorite things about watching the domestic British fighters is, dude, these guys, 6 losses on their records, 8 losses on their records. Not that Ball is he comes from the UK, but they want to fight. These guys, you put them in a ring. The British boxing style is going to be a bit different. The mindset's going to be a bit different. So I'll watch a British card with 6 fighters that I've never heard of just to see 2 dudes fighting. And I think that Ball-Rafa stylistic matchup would be exciting for the fans to see, because we know Espinoza is going to fight him just how Ball wants him to fight him, and we're going to see if Ball would be able to get through that length and distance. Is he going to be able to get his range? We did see a little bit of holes in Ball's game in terms of his last fight. Some people say that was the blueprint on how to beat him. at a high level, but we'll see what happens. Once again, boxing's not a sport that you could look too far ahead. We know Rafa's going to fight right now. And people, like you said in this thread, people who are connected to the channel are saying that Rafa's going to lose. So we'll see what happens. He needs to win. I think Rafa's in the prime of his career. He's looked great lately. Hamza is a tough fight. Berlanga got to come 100%. Yeah, I don't. That's one of those fights that I've been, I'm kind of 50-50 on who to go towards. I don't like I've seen Hamza fade in fights at 160. Moving up to 68 to fight Berlanga, I don't know what to expect. You know what I'm saying? So we'll see what happens. I'll do some more film study. Yeah, I got Rafa winning tonight, guys. If you guys want a fun little prop bet for tonight, Rafa is $1.12. You only get $12 on a return if you go 100 on him to win money line. But Rafa by knockout, this will upset your boy at 3D Boxing. Rafa by knockout plus 179. When I look at Edward Vasquez, he's tough, 17-2, never been knocked out. But that height advantage, the reach advantage, and the styles, but Vasquez is going to be there for him, and Rafa's going to know that. And I always go back to the two fights Rafa had with Robesi, and watching the damage that he could take afterwards and still dish out that damage. That Robesi first fight, he only won that because after he got dropped in the 5th, he dropped Robesi late to give him that victory, to give him the belt. He was a huge underdog. And then in the rematch, he stopped him in the 5th, either the 5th or 6th, with that sort of fluky jab sort of thing. But Robesi quit, and this is the Rafa that we know now, the world champion. I think he's going to be too much for Vasquez. If you want anyway by knockout, it's only $1.10. You got to figure that's what's going to happen. I'm kind of hoping Ramon is very competitive. I want to see a competitive fight. Boxing fans, we deserve a competitive fight. I want to see both competitive fights. This past weekend has been rough, guys. Not a lot of bloodshed, as we say. But before I get you guys out of here, I want to talk about the upcoming schedule. I put the schedule in the community section because I am only a one-man show. Just so you know, if I do a 10 to 15-minute breakdown, the Stats Done Live videos, all in all of me editing, filming, speaking, film study, those videos take me between 2 and 3 hours just to do a 15-minute video. So I would like your help on the fight schedule with all the fights happening this week, which fights you want to see me break down. I'll go over them now. This list is in our community section. So a guy that has a lot of hype on his name, Andres Katsarakis. Katsarakis is fighting. I've gotten a lot of messages about Katsarakis. He's fighting Friday night in America on a DAZN card against Roberto Cruz. I am going to cover that card. I've been researching that. That fight, that breakdown will come out tomorrow. Katsarakis versus Cruz. And then you also have, on the same night, there's 3 fight cards on Friday night in America. Katsarakis versus Cruz in Houston. Dinero Pero versus Navarro in Orlando. And Dominguez versus Rodriguez in New York City. Have a look at those fights. Let me know if you want any of those featured. Then the following day, your Saturday in America, Kachachi versus Lee Wood. I'm definitely going to be covering that fight in Nottingham, United Kingdom. That's going to be a barn burner. If you guys aren't too hip on the English fighters, what we saw with Ben and Eubank Jr., the UK is filled with those sort of guys. Not quite. Well, Kachachi and Lee Wood are world champion level, but they're going to fight, and they're exciting matches. So that's Saturday night. But we also Navarrete. Vaquero. Emmanuel Navarrete is fighting Charlie Suarez. That is a close fight on paper, guys. That's not going to be a walkthrough. Navarrete is only not even quite a 2-1 favorite against Charlie Suarez. That fight goes down in San Diego, California. On that fight card, you have Raymond Muratalla versus Zara Abdullayev. I'm covering that fight. This is a fun fight card. ESPN San Diego. So let me know if you want me to cover those. Mean Machine is back. I don't know if I'm going to have enough time to cover this Mean Machine fight. He's fighting in Equatorial Guinea against Solomon Sissoko. And then Erickson Lubin is fighting in Kissimmee, Florida against Andrew Holmes. And there's some fun fights on that undercard. And then you also have a World Championship Bantamweight title fight in Japan. Fernando Martinez versus Kazuto Ioka. So those are the upcoming fight schedules, guys. I appreciate the support. Like this video. Stay tuned to the channel. Everybody who's supporting my page, I want to say thank you. This time last year, I think I had maybe 8,000 subs. I'm close to 24,000. You guys are the main reason. I learned just as much from you guys teaching me as you probably learned from me, so I appreciate the support. and let's get some money tonight. I told you, I'm going with Rafa by knockout and Inoue by knockout. Get us back on the winning track. Wherever you are, enjoy the fights. Enjoy your time. Like this video, and I'll see you guys on the channel.